Hello ladies and gentlemen, Austin Petersen here, owner of the LibertarianRepublic.com news magazine and soon to be proud owner of the Stonegate Institute. Today we're going to be talking about an issue that's big in the news. Of course, there was a horrible tragedy that occurred in Orlando, Florida just this past week where about 50 people were unfortunately killed by a madman by the name of Omar Mateen. Omar Mateen was a registered Democrat. He owned a Class G gun license in the state of Florida. He was an Islamic radical who identified with ISIS. ISIS has taken credit, but we don't know for certain just what sort of connection, if any, Omar Mateen may have had with potential terror cells in the Middle East. And those are the facts that we know just right now. And of course, politics being what it is, it's important for us to, when we see the facts, to analyze, especially when legislation is being pressed or threatened in Capitol Hill and across the United States. Because my first response, of course, when the shooting happened was to say that no matter how bad a tragedy may be here in the United States, that never justifies us taking away the rights of innocent people. And I'm going to ask you guys to go ahead and, if you have questions during this live stream, I can see them on my own phone, so go ahead and drop them in the live stream, and at the end of this, if we don't get rained on, then I'm going to read some of the questions from today's show. But the big deal is this: it's about whether or not Donald Trump and the NRA are worse on gun control than the ACLU. And I posted this today because it's funny, because we see that the ACLU is criticizing what the NRA and Donald Trump are talking about when it comes to restricting who may or who may not buy a gun in the United States. And it's really unfortunate that this is the subject, this is the topic, and it just shows how much liberal Democrats are controlling the narrative when it's about guns rather than about self-hatred and homophobia in the Islamic community. Because the real issue here is one that the United States, people of the United States, seem to not be ready to tackle. Do you know why? Because it doesn't fit, in essence, the liberal media narrative. That's why we see an attack on guns. Because it wasn't the gun that really attacked and shot people in the Pulse nightclub in Orlando this past week. It was self-hatred. And this is a topic that comes down to the psyche. It's something that we as Americans have trouble dissecting, analyzing, having honest, unbiased, objective conversations about. But me being an objective person, that's the kind of stuff that I'm going to do. So I'll try and come back to it later in the show. But I wanted to talk to you. I've been reading Chris Kyle this week, his book American Gun, and I want to read a passage to you, which I think it just really made me laugh, and is a good story about the type of backbone that people used to have here in the United States compared to what we have today, which is a total lack of backbone. But let's get to the issue here first. The real issue here is, can someone who is put on a terrorist watch list have their Second Amendment rights abrogated? Now, what do I mean when I say that? If the government decides to take you and put your name on a list, can they then say, okay, well, you cannot exercise your freedom of speech, such as I do at the Libertarian Republic right now, publish my opinions, publishing my own news? If I'm on a terrorist watch list, can they take away my First Amendment right? I think most people would react reflexively, no. But then, of course, why is it if they create a terrorist watch list, then they can get rid of my Second Amendment right? So that's the problem, because what the NRA in essence has said is that, oh yes, they can delay your Second Amendment right if, and keep in mind, Omar Mateen was a citizen of the United States, and that's an important fact. Because in essence, what we're asking here, the NRA is asking, what Donald Trump is somewhat confirming in a sense, is should we be allowed to abrogate civil rights? I guess it's more of a natural right, an individual right, to bear arms. Can they do that? And I think the true libertarian position is no. What's really been exciting is to see Governor Gary Johnson, who he and I had a back and forth during the debates about gun control. It's good to see him coming out against the terrorist watch list. I feel like he's a little bit uncomfortable when it comes to talking about mental health issues when it comes to getting guns, because really can be determined to be crazy. But I do congratulate Governor Johnson for being a bit stronger on guns than I've seen him in the past. And who knows what Bill Weld has to say yet. We haven't actually heard from him on this crisis, at least to my knowledge. But the real reality here is that when it comes to Islamic radicalism or terrorism, and it comes to homophobia, I mean, that is a problem. That is a problem that is an insular problem in that insular community. It does exist in the other Abrahamic religions. It does exist outside of Islam. It just seems to be manifested more violently now in modern times, now that Islam has been coming into contact with the Western world more frequently. Because, you know, the other two Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, these religions went through the Enlightenment. And in essence, these two religions, the harshness of some of their policies, like the extremism from these two Abrahamic religions was blunted. And, you know, you don't have Christians engaging in this kind of mass terror against homosexuals, even though there may be, you know, a problem with them wanting to bake a wedding cake, and that's something we can talk about later. But absolute unalienable right to bear arms shall not be infringed. This is not a question about guns, it's a question about culture, about violence in the United States. And do we really, every time some tragedy happens, why do we have to start talking about giving up our rights? I'm opposed to it. And I want to move on, because what's interesting, and the point is that the ACLU, who opposes the terrorist watch list, the ACLU is now more gun-friendly than the NRA. Unbelievable. I want to read to you this passage, this great story that my buddy Joe and I were, who's holding the camera. Hi, Joe.
Hey.
This was something that had just caught my eye, and it just shows the difference between Americans then and Americans now. But before I read this passage, I want to ask you all a favor. Do me a favor, guys. Subscribe to thelibertarianrepublic.com if you haven't today. You can register for an annual membership for a year, or you can do it monthly to help us to spread the message and take over the government so we can leave everybody alone. So a monthly subscription gets you thelibertarianrepublic.com ad-free, and all of your lists on one page, so you don't kind of have to scroll through. Like, I know that carousel annoys some people. This is a great way for you to help our cause, and you can go to thelibertarianrepublic.com. There'll be a pop-up. That's thelibertarianrepublic.com. Glenn Beck told me to say it 3 times, thelibertarianrepublic.com, and register for a membership today. Help us out. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and you would be totally awesome. Help fund the next wave of the revolution. Here's the story. The good citizens of New York in 1863 weren't too keen on being drafted to fight in the Union. They were especially angry at the latest provision of the law, which allowed the rich to buy their way out of service. Mobs rampaged through the city's streets. The New York Times was a vocal supporter of Lincoln and the Republicans, and the crowd decided that it had exercised its First Amendment rights a little too vigorously. Journalists were different in those days. A Times editor passed out rifles to the staff, set up 2 Gatlings borrowed from the army in the windows for all to see, and placed another one right on top of the building. He took the trigger himself. "Give them the grape!" he yelled loud enough to be heard over the approaching horde, "and plenty of it!" Grape was a type of shot or a bullet fired from the cannons. Now, the expression was basically slang for, quote, cleared hot to fire. In modern English, his words meant, shoot the bastards, and do it a lot. The reporters didn't get the chance. Seeing the weapons, the crowd decided freedom of the press was an unalienable right and took off. That's the Gatling gun. I don't know if you can see it there, Joe. The old Gatling gun, 1863. Apparently, Kyle discovered that the Gatling gun didn't really play a strong, integral part in the American Civil War, but it sure did play an important part in turning away that angry mob in 1863. And what's the point? What's the lesson from that? Reporters were different. They used to not be left-wingers, right? Well, what was this reporter the other day? Was it the Daily News in New York? He was like, I shot an AR-15. It was terrifying. It was like shooting a cannon. I mean, I try not to get hard on people for being overly effeminate, but I mean, you know, whatever you want to be, that's definitely not a masculine trait that guy has right there. Be what you want to be, LGBTQ. It's not, no hate, no hate. So yeah, so the question is now, do you guys have questions? Do you want to talk about policy? Do you want to talk about politics? Looks like we've got 258 comments, 42 shares. Hey Joe, how many people are watching right now?
606.
Woo, woo, woo. All right, yeah, reporters actually reported, and everybody must know Austin isn't seeing most of the babble we type. That's not true, Jeff, because I just read your posts. yeah, do me a favor, guys. Send me some questions. I'm gonna go through this real quick and see if we have anything. David Waterman, nice to see you. Jamie Graves, have you guys subscribed to the libertarianrepublic.com yet? Technology in DC, super lags.
We're good.
All right, we're back on. Okay, guys. Well, listen, I'm going to give you about 30 more seconds before I cut it off. But if you have questions for me about the American guns, about your Second Amendment rights, about Donald Trump, the NRA, Gary Johnson, anything you'd like to talk about. Frozen feed, yeah, thunderstorms coming in. 802 people watching. Yeah, any other questions that you guys have? The NRA? Yeah, that's the thing, is that now people are wondering, is the NRA going to take back their endorsement of Donald Trump? Well, they're not going to do that because they already went out on a limb for Donald Trump, right? Love you too, Barry Crawford. All right, well, since we don't have any questions, guys, yeah, we're going to go inside because it looks like it's going to rain. Do us a favor, guys. Help to fund the next wave of the revolution. Buy a subscription to libertarianrepublic.com for an ad-free experience. Check out our sister site, Liberty Viral. And if you like these live streams, but you cannot subscribe to libertarianrepublic.com for any reason, do me a favor and just share this live stream to your feed. Ask people questions, engage with them, talk about the issues, spread liberty the best you can, and the simplest way to do it right now is to share this on your stream. Thanks so much, love you guys, and I'll talk to you again very soon.